think the fuck not.
The Last of Us was Austin to Boston to Salem.
The Last of Us is people dealing with fear and lost hope.
The Last of Us is not only a TV show, but it describes these three people who are the last people to have not seen this show, apparently.
What? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fallingtower's Watch the First podcast in which we watch the first episode of a series so that you don't have to thank us later.
You still can.
And today, of course, we are doing HBO Max's The Last of Us, episode 1 entitled When You're Lost in the Darkness. You know our co-pilot, ATGC, that's DNA talk. He's a scientist. He knows everything. Dr. Muhammad Noor is here.
Hello, always a pleasure to be on Watch the First of Things.
Neil's a little bit more like me, not a scientist, doesn't work at Duke University, not a professor, but where we differ,
not educated.
Neil is a cool guy and writer, director, producer.
Thank you. Yeah.
And you both played zombies in the past too, right?
Yeah, that's true. And When the Fever Breaks.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Ryan, you were like the lead, one of the lead actors. I was just I didn't play a zombie. Ryan was a zombie killer.
That was fun. Cool. Hitting zombie hands with a hammer and fighting people. Oh man, that was maybe my favorite fight scene to do. My name's Ryan T. Husk, everybody. And one of my favorite fight scenes to do, or probably my favorite, was in a movie called When the Fever Breaks. We're all wearing appropriate shirts, I think, for this. Please, if you'd like us to review a show, next month is Fantasy Month. So any fantasy show you'd like us to review, put it in the comments section below, as well as where we can find it, like if it's on Disney Plus or if it's on Hulu or Netflix or whatever. Tell us the show and where we can find it, and we will review it. Maybe. So now just give this video a like, give us a 5-star rating, and please make sure you are subscribed. And let's get into it. I have no idea where to go, so Muhammad, please let us know.
And this is the section we like to call Predictaments, where we predict what each other thought of the show after watching it.
I gotta say that this show gets fun as soon as you say that, because I always remember that's my favorite part of the show. It really is. I look forward to it.
I like the next one better, but we'll come back to that.
Muhammad, I think that you very much like this because you have been talking up a storm about this show. So I think, just based on the fact that you love this show, that you probably are pretty high on this first episode. But I don't think you are extremely high. I think you are extremely high on episode 3, and because you've said that many times. Yep. And but you very much still like this show because of the science element, and you'll have good things to say. Neil, I think you very much like this show because this is right up your alley. I think you really like that scene behind you. You'll have a couple critiques, but overall, you tend to appreciate when people put in some good work, and I think you will be pretty high on this.
And like Muhammad, extremely high as well. Yeah,
he is very high. And Dr. Noor,
hey, we're not talking about what I did before I came on the show. So, Neil, I'm going to do you first. I think you're going to be very positive on the show. I think you're going to come out like, wow, I think this is great. And Ryan, actually, I'm going to gamble. I think you're actually going to be quite positive on this too. I think you're going to think like, wow, I hadn't watched this before, but yeah, I can see what the buzz is about. So I think you're coming pretty high too. We'll see if I'm right.
Neil, your thoughts?
Well, based on what Ryan just said about Muhammad, I'm assuming he likes the show. I think based on our previous conversations, you don't like, you're a little maybe squeamish with the excessive violence and things like that. But this didn't, so far, in episode 1, we didn't see any excessive violence yet. That could be to come, but it's maybe a slower burn in that regard. So I'm going to guess you quite enjoyed this. And Ryan, definitely a little bit tougher to gauge with Ryan because he comes in.
I could sense you looking for euphemisms.
I have a hard time believing you have like some major issues with this show, but you could prove me wrong. So I'm gonna predict that you enjoyed it. Maybe your one criticism is like, it's an hour and a half, and I wish we were further along, or they gave us more, juicy morsels, juicy guts to eat on.
I was picturing a mango. You're like,
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I think you both enjoyed it quite a bit. That would be my prediction.
All right. So everybody at home, now is your chance to make your predictions. You can use our clues, our hints, or you could go on your own like the maverick that you are. We all seem to think that everybody was going to be really high on this. So let us know your predictions. Do you think I liked it? Do you think Neil liked it? Do you think Muhammad liked it? Also, let us know your thoughts on mangoes. All right.
Mangoes.
It's tough to figure out how to cut them and eat them, but I know the best way now, I think.
Overrated, in my opinion. But,
I love mangoes.
I would have.
My wife loves them.
That.
I'm not a mango. Massachusetts, not a big mango state. Apples. I'm an apple guy. Apple guy.
Really?
True and true. Yeah.
Now, which kind? Cosmic Crisp.
All right. Let us know your favorite fruit. Do you prefer apples or mangoes? We're comparing apples to mangoes nowadays, but we're also moving forward into the very next realm of things, which is while you are typing away your predictions, Muhammad is going to buy you some time and give you a little bit of backstory on this if you've never seen it before by telling us all what this show is even about, or as Neil would say, a boat.
You got to mention that every single show. You got to get that.
I hope so.
Got to get that in.
All right. Well, in 2003, Joel and his brother and daughter are making their way through life, but people around them start behaving oddly. It soon becomes clear that a fungal infection is essentially turning people into zombies, and an apocalypse is in progress. Joel and his family try to escape to Mexico, but his daughter, very sadly, gets killed. 20 years pass, and we see Boston is under martial law, with Fedra authorities oppressively running the city and Fireflies seeking more freedom. The Fireflies find a girl, Ellie, who seems immune to the fungal infection, and they task Joel and his partner with delivering her to another group as they leave the city.
Actually, I should have asked, Neil, is that different from how you remember Boston?
No, it sounds about right.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to be sure. I've never been.
Yeah.
All right.
That fallen over building in the show too. They're like, I think Neil's may not be Boston, because there was one that was kind of fallen over that we saw at the end of the first episode.
I see it behind Neil.
It's it looks like Lynn, Massachusetts, where I grew up. Actually, Lynn's a lot nicer now. I think they fixed it up. But, yeah.
Post cordyceps.
Yeah, sorry for getting us off course there, Muhammad. Can you get us back on track and tell us where we're going?
This is my favorite part. This is the section that I like to call expectation. We talk a little bit about what you expect, spend a little bit of time on that, and then a lot more on what you get in the show. Sorry, Neil.
You didn't know Muhammad was so violent, did you? It's weird for somebody that's squeamish about violence. It's squeamish because it gets him. He doesn't want to get too excited about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's compare and contrast what we expected versus what we got. Dr. Noor, before you watch this first episode of The Last of Us, entitled Checks Notes, When You're Lost in the Darkness, what did you expect, if anything?
I'm going to give two answers, because I had seen this before, so I'll answer both before I'd seen it the first time, which is, I think it was actually like the week it aired, or maybe a week after it aired or something. It was fairly soon after. People had said, oh, you got to see this. There's a lot of like science, especially in the beginning and things like that. So I went in for that, like, oh, okay, let's see what this lot of science thing is. I had heard that it was based on a video game, so I knew there was something associated with that, and I knew it was kind of zombie-like. So that was about as much as I knew going in the first time. The second time, obviously, I knew a lot more because I'd actually seen the episode, but I have to say, like, some of the very specifics I'd forgotten. So it was interesting now getting to revisit, having seen, as Ryan knows, at very least episode 3, possibly others. It was interesting getting to revisit aspects and fill in, like, oh, that is kind of seeded early. Oh, so that was an interesting, because I had definitely forgotten some elements to it. But yeah, but I had a general idea what the plot was, even the very first time through.
What about you, Neil Stevens, superstar director and writer?
That's lofty praise there. I had some familiarity with the show and the game for years. Like my brother, and like, this is like the most amazing game. He's like, dude, he'd like, I'd come over on like Christmas. I'd come back home to Boston, and he'd like set it up for me. He's like, look, just take this controller and just start playing. I'm like, I don't know how to play, man. He's like, just you'll love the storyline. Like, the storyline is great. Just go with the storyline. And I had no idea. I was like in the town area walking around, but I didn't see any zombies or anything, because you got to actually know how to play the game. But he's like, oh my God, this story is like, it's all about the story. And even my brother-in-law, my cuñado in Mexico, was like, dude, this game is amazing. So for years, I had people telling me the game is amazing. And then the show comes out and they're like, oh my God, the show is amazing, which wasn't surprising, because if it's a great story in the video game, it should hopefully translate. I think the ones that don't translate, maybe they don't have the greatest stories, but this was already a good story. So I had some high expectations of this show. I was kind of like, all right, show me what you got, Last of Us. This has been built up for quite a while. So I expected, a really solid zombie show, but one that hopefully is not about just scaring you with the zombies. Like, the worst ones are, they're just like, oh, here's zombies. Oh, it's scary. Like, you got to like build up the story. You got to let us know who are the characters. What are their issues? What are they going through? What's going on with society? The zombie story is meant to be sort of a metaphor of that. So I was expecting a little more than your average zombie fare, I would say. And also, it's like, how are you going to do it differently? Like, how, it's like, is there any more genre played out than the zombie genre at this point? I mean, you got to like throw a curveball in there to make your zombies a little bit different. I think I was expecting slow zombies for some reason. So I was thinking this might be a slow zombie thing, like the old Romero days. But yeah, those were my expectations.
All right.
Man,
zombie fair, overrated.
I forgot something. Yeah.
If you've ever been to a zombie fair, it's not all it's cracked up to be. But what were you going to say, Mohammed?
Yeah, I forgot. Actually, there's one other thing that I forgot that I knew ahead of time, which drew me into the show, was the two main people. Not these two, Pedro Pascal for sure, but Bella Ramsey. I was a big fan of her from Game of Thrones. She was like amazing in Game of Thrones. So that was also a draw for me, even coming in the very first time, is knowing that the two of them were in the show as the mains.
Oh, the little girl.
Yeah.
I was like, I've seen her. Now I finally get it. Okay, now I know who she is in Game of Thrones, right? She was the leader of that
the
tribe in the north. Yeah.
Mormonts, yeah.
Got it. Because I was like, who is that girl? I've seen her before. I know her from something.
Yeah. She has a British accent, though, in Game of Thrones, where she completely doesn't here, so she eliminates it for this. I think she normally just does. I think she actually just has a British accent, like when she just speaks. But
well, I'll tell y'all what I expected. Very little, because I didn't really know anything about it. I kind of felt like that Seinfeld episode. If any of you have watched Seinfeld, where they're like, "Oh, you've got to see the baby. You have to see it." It's like, why do I want to see the baby? Everybody always tells me you got to see the baby. So
good
this
Jerry
was one of those.
Actually,
that was Elaine.
No,
that was Elaine. No, that was
Jerry. But thank you. Yeah, everybody said Last of Us. They mentioned it. Everybody's like, you got to see Last of Us episode 3. You got to see Last of Us episode 3. You got to see the baby, right? And that's all I knew about it. I think the only thing I knew besides that was that it was, The Last of Us. I don't know if I knew it or I just guessed it because of the title, like post-apocalyptic. There are few people left. I didn't know if I had no idea it was a zombie type thing. I didn't know if it was, atom bombs or nuclear wasteland or aliens that wiped them out. I just knew that it was very few people left. In fact, I thought it was going to be like 5 people left on the planet is what I assumed. You know what I mean? I just thought it was going to be one of those things. And then they find another person. That's all I expected. But Dr. Noor, what did you actually get?
I have to say, like the first time I watched it, I was positive on it. The most recent time I watched it, I was like, this is outstanding. Like I was very, very, very positive the second time. And part of it was, as I mentioned too, that there were things that get developed in later episodes that I forgot that they were hinted at in the very first one. I rewatched because I watched it just as each episode came out. I would like click on Sunday nights at 9. I would actually be sitting there hitting refresh. So the new one came on, and there partly I was excited, but probably also I wanted to go to bed early and I didn't want to stay up late waiting for it. So yeah, I watched it as it came out, but seeing a lot of the bits in there that I missed the first time, were fantastic. I mean, everything about it. I mean, the first part, I like just sort of the vibe between Joel and what's his daughter's name, Sarah. I like just that, like they got along, but they poke each other and tease each other. And Tommy, the brother, was I like the vibe that was with that. I like the build there, like where something is amiss, where it wasn't. Like it was obvious, but at the same time, even though it was obvious, it was still subtle in how obvious it was. Like, oh, the dog is staring funny. The grandma's twitching. All these little things are happening in the background. Clearly, they're noticing it too. There was a lot of police cars going around, so that was fun just seeing that build up. And then, of course, the I guess you'd say the first climax scene with everything going totally awry in their neighborhood and them trying to escape. I mean, it was the pacing just throughout. I never, even though it was an hour and 20 minutes long, I was captivated. Like there were very few times when I even got slow enough to like look and see what time it was or anything like that. I thought that was good. I like just the sort of just trying to understand how would people behave when all hope seems to be lost, as well as like, in the end when like, okay, now what are people willing to give to maybe bring hope back, which was kind of the latter part of it in terms of what the Fireflies were trying to accomplish. Yeah, I mean, I have so many good things to say about it. I mean, the science part, Ryan, you mentioned the science part. It's fine. I mean, it's light, but it's fine. Some of the specifics on there, like people always ask me, like, well, could that actually happen? Like, I think the specifics are kind of a stretch, but I mean, if fungi were going to evolve something to spread a lot, it probably the most efficient way wouldn't be by making something go bite other somethings like it.
Seems like they're just spores, right?
Exactly. Like spores would be way more easy. I mean,
because then that's it. Everybody gets it in a heartbeat.
Exactly. It wouldn't make for a very good show. And, evolution works with what's available. Like if that mutation to sporulate doesn't come out in cordyceps, then so be it,
Mm-hmm. Does that idea, the heat, the global warming, the temperature heating up, is that like a plausible explanation of why it would evolve into people?
Well, let's talk about that in the meat of the show, because there's going to be a lot of science talk. Right. Neil, I know you're just as excited to hear Dr. Noor give us a lesson. I know I am. Was that everything, Muhammad?
I have more, but we'll come back.
Okay. What about you, Neil? What did you actually get upon viewing this first episode?
I would reiterate a lot of what Muhammad said. I mean, it was, I was definitely watching like, okay, let's see what you got. And I found myself very engrossed in the story. I'm a fan of the sort of slow burn, ticking clock approach where you're throwing these like little morsels, these little mangoes, if you will, to chew on, with the police and or apples if you're an apple person like me. People are coughing and then they're like, we got to close the store. And then of course the clocks are, they're using the metaphor of the clock as in people are running out of time. And so I was definitely like, oh, okay. Is it going down? Is it going down? And once the grandma started twitching, I was like, okay, it's going down. And once animals, like that's a clue, in movies is like once because the animals sense things before we do. So when you see the animals start acting weird, the dog, the cat, the birds, like something's up. So that was I was very engrossed in that. I'm glad they kind of gave us time to kind of flesh out the characters and their relationships. Which then, there was like a big we'll just say like a death, and it really was like, oh man, that is painful because you've had time with these people, and it was like, oh wow, I wasn't necessarily expecting that, although I kind of knew there's something that had to happen, they were going to jump forward or whatever. But yeah, just very impressed. Some great shots, as a director, just some of the shots in the truck, and I thought it was cool because it felt kind of like you're playing the game. There's these shots of them driving, and I could picture myself playing the game and being in the truck, and all these zombies are running around, and planes are crashing. It sort of felt like a video game, and not in a bad way. Sometimes that can be a bad thing, but just very very impressed. Did not know I forgot that it was in Boston, which was cool. And you mentioned Salem, where they're in Salem, Massachusetts. Is that
there was a comment about that's where it
looks like they might be headed. Yeah,
they're heading to Salem.
That's what it seemed like.
Okay, that was the comment when he went to the radio operator. That's where he said Tommy's signal was coming from Salem.
Okay, yeah. Well,
he's in. I thought he was in another. Was he in Wyoming or something, or what?
That's what.
So in the that is that's a spoiler, but that is where he is. But I don't know where the Salem. They said Salem in this episode, which I thought was kind of fun.
Okay, all right. Well, that's cool. I mean, I grew. My family lives in Peabody. We grew up in Lynn, right?
Peabody.
Well, we know. And in Massachusetts, we make up our own ways of saying the cities.
The Peabody Award.
Okay. So
well, tell you what. Let me tell you guys what I actually got, so that it seems like we got a lot of things to say about this. So let's get that part out of the way so that we can just dive into this bad episode. What I got was a bad episode. Sorry, just kidding. What I got was the first, 30 minutes was really an A+ show. It was really, really good in every way. The dialogue was beautifully written. The reveals were great. The action, the stakes, everything, even when you knew what was probably going to be happening, it was done very well. The death that Neil alludes to was beautifully done, was unbelievably good. The girl,
my daughter, I felt so bad.
The young actress was an absolute star, fantastic. The action was nuts. The truck scene in the truck was like, you can't look away for a second. I couldn't take notes. And that, as Neil said, you felt like you're in a video game. I didn't know this was a video game. I just was like, they did a really good job of putting you there. And yeah, absolutely A+. Now, the other 60% of the show was good. It was good. It didn't knock my socks off. There was nothing that was great in my mind. There are a lot of things that I've seen, a bunch of times before. But nothing was bad. Everything was good. But that first part was like, man, eat your heart out, Taxi.
Taxi, the TV show Taxi?
There's the video game Crazy Taxi. Could be that.
Yeah. Twisted Metal was another fun video game.
Oh, all right. That was a big Twisted Metal guy.
That's a good one. So now let's there's too many things we got to jump back onto now, because we kept going off onto those things that we want to talk about. But the first one, I think, was the science of it, Muhammad. That really, I thought that was so well delivered that they just had that scene. They didn't tell us what happened. They just gave us that initial scene. And we're able to obviously put it together and we know what happened. And that's such a smart way to do it. That was new. That's a new way to do it. There was zero exposition. Nobody told us anything. We just said, oh, I guess that's what happened. So that was A+. But I thought the science was pretty good. And this is a guess, not from any point of knowledge, in that, yes, there are, fungi that take over ants and turn them into zombie ants and stuff. But I don't think I remember the zombie ants like running at high speeds and being super crazy. They're more just like tweaking out. And so that's kind of what I expected. But Mohammed, is that right or wrong? You're the expert.
No, you're right. Actually, I pulled up the Ed Yong article because I thought you might reference that. So there's a science writer named Ed Yong who wrote about these zombie ants. This was just like 5 or 6 years ago. I think it's in the Atlantic or something like that. But here, I'll just read like the last paragraph of his article. So what we have here is a hostile takeover of a uniquely malevolent kind. Enemy forces using an ant's body and using that body like a walkie-talkie to communicate with each other and influence the brain from afar. Hughes thinks the fungus might also exert more direct control over the ant's muscles, literally controlling them, quote, as a puppeteer controls a marionette doll. Once an infection is underway, he says, the neurons in the ant's body, the ones that give its brain control over its muscles, start to die. Hughes suspects that the fungus takes over. It effectively cuts the ant's limbs off from its brain and inserts itself into its place.
Wow.
This is right. The ants end up ending its life as a prisoner in its own body. The brain is still in the driver's seat, but the fungus has the wheel.
Isn't that
wow? They grow
amazing?
Mushrooms on the. That's real. They grow mushrooms out.
So
it'll
invade the body, and then it basically just takes over the body, and it forces the ant to climb up to high places, and then it just essentially like eats it from the inside and bursts out. Very aliens.
Oh, that's wow.
That's hardcore. And so that's what they must have been referencing. And when they said that at the beginning, I recognized that. I saw it on like a nature show back in the day, and I was like, wow, that's a real thing that can happen. And they hypothesize how it could actually affect humans. So I thought that was really good. Now, again, I don't think it makes them go nuts.
Well, this is the thing is people often equate that then with humans. They say, oh, humans are but ant brains are like nothing. Most insect brains are almost nothing.
It's very hurtful, Muhammad.
Just as an analogy, you can order online for like $100. You can order a kit called Robo Roach. And you can literally get this thing where you break the antennae off of roaches and put these little electrodes in them in a backpack, and you can control a roach with a remote control. You can actually go over.
But then you have to touch the roach, right?
What's that?
But then you have to touch the roach, and then is the cockroach fine afterwards?
Not really. It's basically now you're a zombie, but you have a little remote control you can control it.
So it's still alive, and you're controlling it.
Yeah, because they're super simple. They're not like us, and so this thing is
not yet. I mean, if they're already doing it, if they're doing it with roaches now, in 10 years, it's coming for us.
We're going to start implanting our AI in there, and suddenly we're going to be taken over by these silly little roaches.
That's how it starts. That's how if it's already possible in insects, it's only a matter of time.
No, again, the insect brain and our brain is they're radically different. Like it's so basic. Whereas ours, I mean, especially what's happening here, it's not just that it's controlling the movement of your body, but you still have all your senses. Like you're looking and you're hearing and you're doing all this. It's like, okay, so clear. It's not really at that point. It's almost like a hallucinogen more than actually controlling you, right? And that aspect, obviously there are fungi which are
hallucinogens can't control you.
Yeah,
that's we've all been there. Neil knows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So anyway, Neil, you had other questions too, if I remember correctly. Was it about Bastin?
Well, it's funny. As a writer, I'm always asking the experts and the scientists. I'm like, okay, I know this is this is probably not going to happen, but it needs to make enough sense that it could be a plausible situation with some pseudoscience that might so the mind can make that leap and be like, okay. Yeah, we go from robo roach to robo human, even though our brains are totally different. Like you were talking about the robot, I'm immediately like we're going to be doing that with people, and so someone could make that jump. It could happen, or even though the minds are obviously far different. But it was interesting because they threw in they seemed to be kind of commenting a little bit on the COVID pandemic, and then with climate change, with it getting warmer. So therefore, that was kind of their way of saying, well, this is, the 1970s and climate change isn't necessarily. So the guy's like, yeah, this is probably not going to happen. But if the planet was warming, it could happen. So we in 2023, I'm like, well, yeah, duh. So it was kind of like, oh, well, all right. Well, if they are they going to evolve that quickly? And then it could be plausible that the fungus could get inside, which I'm assuming they got the stuff coming out of their nose.
Yeah.
And I just saw the fungus on the ant. So clearly, that's the fungus.
It also grew too fast for my brain to like the way it's just like super grown.
Yeah.
That was also a little bit weird.
I'll walk back what I said earlier. I guess rabies is not crazy different from that. Right? I mean, that's that's not crazy. Right. But again, it's making you it's more like a hallucinogen as opposed to actually like having this goal directed aspect. This is often the thing with fiction is they tend to make things very goal oriented as opposed to this just happens to result in that spreading a lot more. That it adds this thing which makes you behave in a certain way that just happens to result in it's being spread more. So that, I mean, to some extent, that aspect to it is fine. Again, I think my bigger beef with it is less what I just said, but more the whole, like, it seems like if it's going to spread, it's way more like if these spores just go everywhere and everybody gets it.
Yeah. That's
like
easy.
Coughing on someone instead of like eating their brains, you're just coughing in everyone's face, basically.
Yeah.
A zombie that just is coughing.
Yeah.
Coughing at everyone, right? Like,
it was interesting. Did you see the chart? They had that chart that you saw in the Fed.
Oh, I love that. That was fun. I paused it and took notes on that. That was good. I love that stuff.
Where like if you got bit in the leg, you had like 17 hours. If you got bit in the arm, you had 5 hours. If you got bit in the neck, you had like an hour and a half or something.
Yeah,
like
5 to 15 minutes, I think.
Yeah,
and then it showed the symptoms was like coughing and muscle spasms and slurred speech. And I'm like, I find myself pausing that and like being like, oh yeah, if I'm got a slurred speech and doing that, I'm like, that is such a typical zombie move, So when you do that, you don't need to be taught that. You can already see you're like, oh, that's a zombie waiting to happen. I've seen enough movies to know.
They got about 25 minutes left.
The guy's twitching and slurring their speech and going, I want to eat you. You're like, yeah, that's zombie stuff.
Stage 3 zombification right there. Yeah.
Yeah, so it really is again less control and more just like it does something that makes you like have encephalitis or something. You just behave crazy, and then that happens to result in the thing spreading. That's okay. That's very fair. And yeah, it could happen. I think you asked earlier, Neil, if it could be associated with global climate change. Sure. I mean, things are adapting to warmer temperatures. Yeah, sure. That's not crazy at all.
And what kind of fungus was it? I forgot. It was some kind
cordyceps. The only reason I remember this, Sean Farrick, who tweets all the Star Trek stuff a lot. Yeah, he found this bottle and he took a picture of it and posted it on Twitter. And it was these cordyceps pills, and he wrote his caption was, "I think the fuck not."
So, what kind of mushrooms are cordyceps? I guess I could have looked that up.
So because of climate change, we're gonna turn out like these ants and have like mushrooms growing out of it. Is that what you're saying?
I did not say that.
No, Muhammad is saying we have 2 years to live.
Yeah.
These are cordyceps right here. They look really good.
There you go.
Good thing they're on a spoon to let us know how appetizing they are.
Not a big mushroom guy.
They actually look like the kind of magic mushrooms. I wonder if magic mushrooms are a kind of cordyceps because they, not too far off. Anyway, not that I would know anything about that.
I think I laughed for days after I saw that tweet.
So, let's ask this fun question. Dr. Muhammad Noor, who was your favorite character?
Oh, definitely. What's her name? Ellie. Yeah. I was like, Ellie.
Why did that girl call her Veronica at first?
So remember, she said that she had left her when she was young in federal authorities, but she changed the name when she did that. She didn't tell them what her real name was. So I think the girl thought her name was Veronica. It's like, no, actually, you're Ellie.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Oh, she didn't. Yeah. She said a very brief version of that in this episode. That actually gets elaborated. Like you actually see her birth scene later.
Okay.
Is the girl, remember when they jump ahead 20 years later, was that, what's her name? What's the character? Bella
No,
Ramsey.
Sarah's dead.
No, she did.
No.
She's dead. Sarah's
That's
dead.
spoiler alert. No, I don't
No,
mean
I said it in the
that.
beginning. I said it in the summary.
But was that the girl after the 20-year jump who we see like come out of the woods? Was that the Bella Ramsey character, or was that a different girl?
That was different. She was. I think she was the one who they threw in the pile in the fire pile later.
Oh,
The one who walked into the city, and then they scanned her, and then it came up red. And then that's when the lady was like, "I can't throw it." And
I thought that was a boy, not a girl.
I thought it was the same one, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. The head was covered, so you couldn't tell. Remember, the head had like a bag.
That was one of the great reveals, because when they scanned the kid that I thought was a boy, and the light goes up red, my first thought was, uh-oh, he's infected. And then she says, oh, we're going to do this and that. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I would have thought that red would tell us, hey, wink, wink, this kid's infected. But maybe green means infected, because I don't know. And then the very next scene, we get it. And we're like, that's such a powerful way to do it. A beautiful reveal. And they had a few really good reveals like that, but that was another A+ one. Neil, who was your favorite character?
Probably the zombie grandma character.
Spoken like a true Neil.
Twitching grandma. Yeah, that was pretty creepy. I don't know, when she was in the background, all like blurry, and then you see her starting to move. It was like you knew, that's the person you least expected. So when it's when your grandma's a zombie, like you're not gonna be terrified. You're not gonna run away. You're gonna be like, Grandma, what's going on? Like, are you okay?
When you lean in, they bite.
Yeah, you're not terrified when your grandma comes at you like that, because you think she's harmless, and then she gets you, and you're done.
It sounds like somebody's got a case of syngenosophobia. Syngenosophobia. Fear of grandmothers.
You're gonna have to define that.
Fear of grandmothers. Oh my God.
Obviously.
That one I found problematic, just in the sense that, like, I'm assuming her muscles have atrophied because she's just been sitting there for so long. But she's like, Miss Physical Fitness once she gets to the cordyceps there.
That's the rabies strength, right? Like you're suddenly superhuman. Yeah. That's another one the audience doesn't. They're like, zombie grandma. You're expecting her to, move mountains.
But I can also justify that, just thinking, okay, maybe it taps into the adrenaline. Like, we know that we have that capability in us when it's tapped. So maybe it tapped. You can't imagine that the fungus is going to give it any strength, but maybe the fungus can trigger that strength within Graham, even though she was pretty frail and she couldn't eat her muffins, her biscuits very well. I'll tell you, my favorite character, I think, was probably that little girl from the beginning, and not necessarily because of at the beginning, not necessarily because of the character was that great, but because the actress was really mind-blowingly good. Like, I'm always pretty hard and pessimistic on kid actors, and every once in a while there's one that goes like, not all of us. Some of us are pretty damn good. Neil had a very good kid actor in a movie a little while ago too that proved us wrong there. But she was really good, and she basically led us through the story. She was our guide through the story. We saw it through her eyes. And actually, I pictured you, Muhammad, when she woke up and she was kind of like looking around the house, all scared, nervous. I pictured you being really nervous for that kid the first time, being a parent yourself. And I can only imagine that you're seeing it through her eyes, but you're also seeing it through the eyes of somebody that's concerned for her. Whereas when it's an adult, you kind of are like, whatever, good luck, buddy. But really can't say enough about that first 30 minutes and how well she did. Anyway, that's who I liked.
Yeah, I texted my daughter right after she died. I was like, I love you.
You were so affected.
I was very affected.
Well,
not infected though.
Did you guys have a favorite moment?
Oh my God, which one?
Ooh.
there were a lot of one-liners that I thought were really fun. I thought that was interesting. Like like, so coming back what you said, like the Sarah's look when the neighbor said like they were raisin cookies instead of chocolate chip. That look he gave.
That was so freaking good. Just that tiny little adjustment in her face. That is such seasoned acting to be able to portray that reaction, which was gold. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. We've all been there as kids, and it's like they put out the cookies, and you're hoping, and then they're like raisin. And it's like, why?
And that smile turns into like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm older. I appreciate a good raisin cookie now that I'm older, but when you're a kid, it's like,
fake chocolate. Yeah.
Why would anybody put raisins in cookies when chocolate chips exist already? It's not like chocolate chips haven't been invented yet, and so like we're just like, those poor suckers never found out about. No, that they're just choosing. They're like, I'm going to keep the chocolate chips in the cupboard, and I'm going to put in some raisins instead.
Yeah. That's the old folks. That's what they do. That's what you do when you get older. You start putting weird shit in cookies.
You're going to start putting prunes next time.
Digestion.
Some of the lines I liked was, "My son, the smart one, not the other one. God bless him."
Yeah.
And when Joel said he'd take Ellie, but he would shoot her if they didn't give her stuff. And Marlena was like, "Done." And she's like, "Really? That fast?" There were a lot of just these like this is little one-liners that I just really enjoyed quite a bit. I thought those were really good. And I guess the line that Joel said at one point in time, we said it something like, "If you tell me to look for the light, I'm going to break your arms." Remember that was the thing that was written everywhere from the Fireflies. When you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.
Okay, right, yeah.
Neil, did you have any favorite moments or moments you hated? Probably.
No, come on. I don't hate. One cool moment was when Ellie, Ellie's the Bella Ramsey. Sorry, Bella Ramsey.
Yeah, that's Bella Ramsey. Right?
Yeah. So when they're all lined up, and the cop is there, and he's like, "You guys are outside of, you're outside of the area." She stabs the guy. And I was like, what is she doing? Like, they're negotiating. They're going to get out of this. Like, why would you do that? Like, you're just going to give them some ration cards and go. But the reason she did it is because she like tests infected. And when they showed that afterwards, I was like, oh, because she like tests like she is infected, even though she seems fine. So anyone who catches her is going to kill her. So she had to do that because he was going to kill her. That was a cool dramatic moment.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to mention as far as the great reveals. One was that little boy that died and how they revealed that, and the other one is how they showed us her situation. Because look, here's where I rolled my eyes and wanted to fast forward, was when they said, "Oh, this girl is our only hope. She's the magic savior." I was like, oh God, one of these shows. Okay. Every show has a kid that is like the chosen one or the savior, or they're the elixir, right, Neil?
For the last 2,000 years, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always
Ryan,
it's the same freaking thing. But the way they revealed exactly why that is and how that is was masterful, was perfect. In the scene that Neil mentioned. So again, most ideas have already been done before. It's really hard to have some new idea. The key is execution, and they executed a lot of these things really well, in my opinion. I did roll my eyes.
I like that scene too for the triggering too of Joel, because like he was seeing that previous scene with his daughter again in there, and I was like, oh yeah, and like he's like, I'm not, even though it's not his kid, even though he's not connected to her at all, he probably couldn't care less about her. He's like, I will not let this happen again. I mean, he didn't say that.
Care less about her either.
and there was that great shot, piggybacking on that, when he puts that one kid in the fire, and he's holding her the same way he was holding his daughter.
Yeah.
So we see this like this sort of transition from 20 years ago, like he was holding his dead daughter, and now he's like just putting children into the fire. Like, you've seen how much society has crumbled at this point. Like, it was definitely, they were echoing those two shots with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's sad because some kids are okay, so it's got to be really.
Some kids don't deserve the flame. Yeah.
Neil, that is not where I was going with that. I am very disappointed in you.
Did you have a favorite scene, Ryan?
Oh, it's just really all of that first 30 minutes that I mentioned. Maybe the truck scene when they're in the truck, because I was thinking about like the actual execution of that, like when they're shooting it, like that's a lot of extras. That's a lot of choreography. That's a lot of stunt choreography. That's a lot of planning. I know, Neil, when you're directing stuff, if somebody said, all right, we're going to have 150 extras, you're going to be doing, your eyes are going to get so big because of how awesome that sounds. But also, that is an undertaking. And the fact that they did it so well that I couldn't even take notes on it and it was perfect. They deserve some kind of award for that.
The dialogue in the truck scene was great too. Just the whole like, well, how do we know we're not affected? Do we know? Like, how long do you have to be in the city? I'm like, it's true, that fear that it was palpable.
Are we safe anywhere? Can we go anywhere? Yeah,
it's beautiful.
And I liked how they didn't just do quick cuts either. Like they didn't do any crazy oneers or anything, but they were extended like one shot scenes where there would be several seconds, but it would be like you're saying, tons of extras. You got planes flying overhead. You've got like massive visual effects, the visual effects in this are actually quite good.
And the makeup,
the makeup, high quality.
Mm-hmm.
Because some shows the VFX it doesn't blend in. With this show, it seems like they're shooting a lot of practical sets that are then sort of like enhanced with the VFX, which is the way to do it, to kind of mix the practical with the visual effects.
I just want to say one more thing before we move on too. When thanks for reminding me about the makeup. Look, visual effects makeup, really cool, really fun, whatever. We get it. That's the best part. But I think we really got to give kudos, at least me personally, for the people that did the makeup that wasn't just like big zombie people. But for example, when the lady, boy, I wish I knew her name, Tess. Yeah, when Tess had the black eye, okay, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a fake black eye on somebody and said that's a fake black eye. Not just because it's a movie and obviously it's fake, but because it looks fake. It always looks fake. It never, just like when people have old person makeup. How has nobody ever done old person makeup well yet still? But same thing with black eyes. They don't look like black eyes. Hers looked perfect. And we're getting close-ups and well-lit close-ups. And we're looking at that eye. And I'm like, that is very, very good. So kudos to whomever is doing that, where they're not just like focusing on making people look like monsters and doing all this stuff, but they're actually doing amazing detail on like the regular VFX makeup, the kind of stuff that's in between VFX makeup and beauty makeup. So big kudos there. That was very noticeable for me. But speaking of makeup, Neil Patrick Stevens, let's talk about you for a moment, shall we?
Okay. All right. We don't have to. I mean, we can just talk.
NBA, come on, you're fun.
NBA playoffs, or
we do have to though, because we want to know an update on what's going on in your world. You've done quite a few short films. You've got a lot of projects in the works. You are definitely one of those people that studies the craft in a town full of just people. The people that go, oh, we'll just write a script. Oh, I'll just direct it. How hard can it be? Oh, we'll just, you're the kind of person that never thinks it's just this or just that.
Okay.
You study it. You put your money where your mouth is. You hire the right people. You take the time. You don't rush it. I mean, you do it the right way. So we want to know what's next.
Well, after that wonderful introduction, I wish I could. I wish I could tell you something really cool, but I'll just say, things have kind of changed in my career now, where I was just doing shorts and making things and not saying I'm just going to do this. I would just do it, as they say. But when you get to bigger projects like feature films and TV shows, you do need significant resources to make them. So I'm writing a lot of interesting movies, mostly feature films, some interesting horror, a lot of interesting horror movies, and then kind of pitching them and trying to see if I can get something going with a production company and a producer. So I'm kind of just pitching projects at the moment. I've got I forget if I probably mentioned this last time, but I've got a smart home invasion movie that has been kind of getting around.
You showed me a lot of like the pitch deck and all the imagery from it and stuff. That was really cool.
So we'll see. That's been out for a little bit. We'll see what happens with that. I've got this kind of like you remember this movie? You probably watched this movie, Mohammed. The movie Contact. Maybe you read
definitely.
the book.
I didn't read the book, but I saw the movie
with Jodie Foster, right?
Jodie Foster.
I thought it was great. Yeah.
I've got like imagine that movie where like there's a sound coming from outer space. Now imagine the horror, say like a cult horror, like there's a cult on the loose who hear the sound. The horror version of that movie, where it's called The Hum, and the sound is a hum. Actually, people hear this noise. 2% of people hear this humming noise, and they don't know where it's coming from. It's like unidentified.
Are they near an airport?
It's all over. I mean, it could be a number of things. It could be a lot of different, or maybe it's just tinnitus. I don't know. But it's a phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon, and I thought, what if that is coming from outer space? And what if only the chosen people hear it? And what if that is some kind of like instructions on how to evolve as human beings, but that might have very dangerous consequences for the people who believe it. There's a lot of like post-human ideas in there. What can we become post-human? And a lot of brain stuff, Mohammed. Are you an expert on the brain? Because I might have some brain questions. No,
much more genetics than brain. Everybody always wants to do a lot of neurobiology. That's not me, sadly.
All right. But it's
something really basic. I could look at it, but if it's advanced,
he'll know.
with the human brain, I don't know if you're like following some of this stuff, but like they're getting much better imaging of the brain. They've mapped the brain of like some very simple organisms.
Yeah,
maybe the
Alabamans. I'm just kidding, Alabama. We love you. It's just a joke, everybody. Love you out there.
But it's interesting because if you can map the brain, like you could create like a digital person or a digital copy of yourself, and it opens some interesting questions. Like, is that you? Is that your essence? Is that your soul? What if, could you transfer yourself to the computer? If you transfer yourself to the computer, is that you?
Transhumanism.
Will there be two yous? How will you know if you're the original you or not? There's some interesting that we don't really have answers to. Some interesting philosophical questions there. I don't know.
It's like the transporter question in Star Trek. Like, is the other thing actually you, or is it just like a copy of you, and actually you has just been vaporized?
Right. And maybe you won't know. And so what makes you? Like what? And we don't really have an answer to that, which is interesting. But there's no way. Maybe with this AI stuff, we'll get some insight into like what is consciousness, because if the AI becomes conscious, what does that even mean for us? Like, how could a digital thing have consciousness if we have so what is consciousness? Even a biological thing? Is it something else? I'm throwing stuff. I'm just throwing
I love it.
Ideas out there.
I love it.
This is all very nerdy, but when you guys kept talking about replicas of you and saying use, I just kept thinking like that's what they used to do cloning, right? Was use. Like that's what they tested
the sheep. Yeah.
That's what they. So I was like, doesn't anybody catch this thing that's happening here? But then anyway, that's really cool. That's a lot of really fun stuff, and it makes our minds wander into all these crazy places. And we hope that it all works out for you, Neil, and everything continues on that trajectory of success that you've been enjoying. You're like a runaway freight train, and the tracks are success. Wait,
I'm like a
runaway
street car. I'm like the guy with the on the train tracks doing this. The old like escaping from prison, like let's get on the train. When they're
it's like
doing that. You got one person on one side. It feels like more like that. Where I'm just doing this, doing that.
That's great.
You could prep for the script
fantastic.
You could prep for the script by ordering Robo Roach and trying it out.
I'll tell you something. My imagination started going places when you were talking about that. That is very interesting because that's gonna happen. If it's already happening with the insects, it's gonna happen. It's only a matter of time. They're gonna start using it on people, but they got to get the brain. Figure out the brain. We won't be able to figure it out, but like AI might be able to figure out how to like
AI might be able to figure it out. So that one was too easy. It's time to move forward. Muhammad knows it is time for the bottom line, the final two questions. AI.
Very good. Bottom line. Yes. You joined it. You joined the club.
The terrible twos, that is.
No!
So sorry. All right, here they come. Fast and furious. Question number 1. Dr. Muhammad Noor. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this first episode of The Last of Us?
I would give it a 9.4. I really liked it a lot. I was very happy. And actually, it's interesting, Ryan, what you were saying about how you thought the first part was outstanding and the second part was just good. That was exactly my reaction when I watched it the first time. But then having seen more of the series and coming back to it, I now appreciate that second part a lot more than I did the first time through it. So that's why I think that's part of why I'm very high on that.
Very good. What about you, Neil? On a scale of 1 to 10, would you dare give it a 9.4?
I'm gonna, let's go Price is Right. I'm gonna go 9.5.
Whoa!
Go 1.1 over without closest without going over. I'm gonna go 1.1 higher. I agree. I was very impressed. Even though I had very high expectations to begin with, it was just a fantastic production. Everything, the writing, across the board, like clearly a lot of care and love was put into this, and making video game audiences happy is probably one of the most challenging things you could do as a storyteller, because they're coming in with their
not happy
notion. They're not happy about anything, but I feel like it is impressive that this seems to have delivered a show that fans and non-fans alike, everyone seems to be happy with this, maybe except for Ryan, but everyone I'm sure he likes it, but everyone seems to be happy about this, and that is a very impressive feat that they were able to accomplish that. So kudos to all the people involved with this show. I think they did a fantastic job.
Well, you're right that I didn't hate it. However, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's definitely in a plus. It's a 5 point. No, it's an 8.3 for me. Muhammad's eyebrows went all the way to the back of his head.
Whoa,
almost like a 10. Like 9.9.
No, it's an 8.3 because really that first part, I keep repeating myself, but that first part was very high on the Richter scale for me. I was, I could barely nitpick anything from that first 30 minutes. Stellar. The rest, like I said, was more like a 7. It was things that I've seen a million times in packaged in one way or the other, and it wasn't any worse than any of that stuff. There was a little bit of Walking Dead in there. There was a little bit of a few other elements, but that's not their fault. Don't hold that against them, because it's just like, judge it for what it is. And so I think overall it averages out to about an 8.3. It was good. And I have a feeling that it's going to stay pretty good. Although I would have preferred the tone of the first 30 minutes to stay through it. There was a different tone. It went from kind of horror-ish show, high intensity horror drama, to, post-apocalyptic political intrigue almost, like these warring factions kind of thing. But anyway, so that's where I am, 8.3. But question number 2 is the big one. For the purposes of this podcast, we all had to watch the first episode of The Last of Us, but now that the podcast is over and we're free to move about the internet, Dr. Muhammad Noor, would you watch the second episode of your own volition?
I don't know. I'm really on the fence. No, absolutely. I watched the entire thing. I would happily probably watch it again, honestly. But seriously, on the second episode, I remember the second episode I remember literally exactly how it starts. I remember exactly how it ends. So that, yeah. Actually, I will say that just in general, this is a show that over half the episodes as I watched them, I ended up with like tears on my face by the end. So
very good.
Warning for anybody going in, don't be expecting like a happy show.
Post-apocalyptic in Boston, I'm guessing it's not a happy show.
It's not all Boston. It's like Boston's like for the first 2 episodes and then it moves on from Boston.
All right, spread the pain everywhere.
That might change my opinion of when I'm going to keep watching it. If not.
Well, Neil, would you of your own volition watch the second?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this. I'm in the middle of binging Succession, trying to get caught up.
Me too. I'm doing the same.
Trying to get caught up to where we're at with Succession. So I'm probably going to get through Succession first. And also the wife is out of town and she wants to watch this as well. So
party at Neil's.
Anytime we can watch stuff together, that's good. Because I watch a lot of weird shit that nobody really likes. But this is a show that everyone seems to like. So as soon as I get through Succession, this is next up on the block, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it.
How far are you
in Succession? I'm season 1, like episode 8 or 9.
I'm on 2.5 episode.
2.5. Okay,
yeah. Just a little ahead of you.
WTF Succession, everybody! If you'd like us to review Succession.
Wow. That's a show everyone raves about.
WTF Succession. Yeah, I've heard that everybody is loving it, and where we can watch it as well. By the way, Neil, your triceps are looking pretty good. I noticed earlier.
Good work there. All right. Thank you. Yeah,
that's your chest.
It's the train.
He's like, oh, my triceps. So, well, let me tell you. Strangely enough, I would not watch the second episode of my own volition. Neil's waiting for me to say, just kidding. But I was happy with what I got. To be honest, what I want to do is actually just rewatch that first episode again. It didn't titillate me or tease me or tantalize me enough to where I must see the second episode. I was just very happy with the first episode, especially the first 30 or so minutes. And I'd actually want to go back and just rewatch that first 30 minutes. Now I'm curious about it, and Muhammad is near tears right now. And I might watch the second and third episode just because everybody keeps raving about the third episode. So I might do it just to see that, because I know it must be really great if everybody is saying great things about it.
The third is standalone. You don't have to watch the second. You can jump to the third and see it by itself. It's standalone.
But if I didn't know that, and it was just based on this first episode, I'd be like, oh, that was pretty good. And I would move on with my life, and I would remember that first 30 minutes as a cherished memory and something to look back on, honestly.
Tough audience.
That's a good show. Go check it out, everybody. But that's it. So if you'd like us to review a show, in the comments below, please suggest it. Remember, May is fantasy month. So recommend us your fantasy shows, or science fantasy, if you know what I'm getting at. We know what science fantasy is. That's it. All right. Make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star rating and review if you're listening in. What I'm trying to say is this podcast was so freaking cool because I like these guys and I'm glad they're not zombies.
This podcast was a scintillating conversation with great friends too.
Is this a new thing? You got to say what you think of the podcast at the end.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
I'm glad to spend The Last of Us with the rest of us, if we must. I don't know. I got nothing but I don't know.
It's all good.
I'm trying to make a pun joke or something.
Fantastic. This guy's
The Last
been on
of
the show
Us for the rest
7
of
times
us.
and forgot.
Festivus, I love the reference. So much Seinfeld.
Yeah. So that's it. We will see you all soon. Everybody, please remember what Mr. Michael Kenyon Rosenberg always likes to say. This is also not a new thing, Neil.
Yeah. When it's dark at night, look for the. No, he doesn't say that. He said, don't forget to be an organ donor, and don't forget to watch the first of things.
All right. Freeze frame like you're being devoured by some mushrooms.